Hello, 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 hello. Welcome back. Welcome back. I say welcome back, but to you guys, I'm sure it seems like I just posted a video yesterday, but for me, this is my first recording that I'm doing uh, in almost 9 months, unfortunately. It's been a long time coming, almost a year in the making, this episode. Um, so, yes, hi, I am back. I was a guy who recorded a Let's Play of episode 1, and then unfortunately, I took an extremely long break after episode 1. Not the game's fault. I was having a great time with the game. Unfortunately, the finale of chapter 1, just before the tea party, that episode I recorded got corrupted and was ruined. I could not upload it. It was frustrating, and so I opted to take a small break because I was angry that, the big moment of episode 1, I couldn't share with everyone, all the build-up. And then after I took a break, I fell out of the habit of recording, and unfortunately, I got involved with other stuff, and then I just never came back to it. I wanted to come back to it, and it just didn't happen. But here we are. I'm back now. It's been a while, but we're returning. I would like to say that we're in it for the long haul this time, and it would be awesome if we are. But life is life. Shit happens sometimes, so I can't guarantee that. But I'm gonna cross my fingers nonetheless and say, hopefully, this time we're gonna blow through this. We're trucking through. We're on the Umineko train, and we're gonna ride it out to the end. Because I would like to. I very much enjoy the game. So I'm very glad that we're back into it. I spent 4 to 5 hours refreshing myself on everything that happened in episode 1. Yesterday I spent roughly 5 hours going through and reminding myself of everything that happened. Obviously I didn't read every line again. I'd like to think that I have a pretty good memory of what happened. Almost everything that I read through was simply a refresher and not something I actually completely forgot about. So I might not remember every conversation that happened, but for the most part, almost all the large and small details I should definitely still have in my mind moving forward. And the last thing I recorded just before I took this long break is the George and Shannon date, followed by the Chapter 2 OP, Episode 2, whatever you want to call it. And that was sitting on my computer, not uploaded, for the longest time. So I did just upload it yesterday. And I left a note in the comments that, today with this episode would be the first episode that I've actually recorded with my return. So, yeah, here we are. We are ready to get into it. I'm ready to, get back into the habit and hopefully put out these super regularly. So let's go. I'm excited. Let's get started. Umineko, Episode 2. Okay. All right. So, obviously I've said a lot before that I assume the characters will be back somehow. The question is, how will they remember the events of Chapter 1, Episode 1? Or will it be a fresh slate where they don't remember anything and things happen differently this time around? I'm not sure. I'm very interested to see how we pick up from the entire cast being killed off. Well, I say the entire cast. There's the OP that just played obviously shows there's a hell of a lot more cast than I know of yet. But everyone I knew got removed from the situation. So how do we pick it back up? Let's find out. My mind wandered back to the days when I could barely imagine the happiness I have now. I was a middle schooler at the time, a normal girl who thought about love as much as you'd expect of someone at that age. Okay, the just before the OP, we were in Shannon's point of view, so I'm curious to see if that's where we still are. But in truth, it was wrong of me to have that dream. After all, I am furniture. I'd definitely say this is probably Shannon's point of view, yeah. Furniture is nothing more than a tool, not a human. As a person less than human, simply receiving an education was an enormous blessing. So in reality, even thinking about falling in love was more than I deserved. The Ushirimiya family conference was a customary event held every October, but relatives sometimes visited at other times. Of course, they didn't come just to drink tea. On this day, Eva's family was visiting the head family in Rakanjima. Okay, so maybe we're still not up to the point in time where episode 1 took place. Obviously, the date with Shannon was back further in time, and I guess maybe we're forward more, but still not up to the present day. The 3 members of Cross's family and the 3 members of Eva's family had gathered in the parlor, and were having a friendly chat about recent events. Genji had supposedly told Kinzo of Eva's family arrival, but he still hadn't come down. He probably was immersed in his research and couldn't spare the time. This often happened, so the others waited patiently for their fickle father to arrive.
それは頼もしいじゃないか。お父さんのところでたくさん勉強して早く手助けができるよう頑張りたまえ。
ありがとうございます。
It's weird seeing them interact in a situation that isn't them scrambling for their dying father's money. You know, this seems like it might be a wholesome, happy family gathering.
今は父の紹介でたくさんの人生の先輩方に本当に貴重な勉強をさせていただいています。そのいずれも学校では学べないことばかりです。
学校で習うのは国語算数やない。ものを学ぶ姿勢と態度を学ぶんや。その基礎ができてようやく生涯をかけた勉強が始まるんやで。ここをな、勘違いしとるやつは生涯学べん石頭や。国語算数で満点取れても会社じゃ役に立たへん。
全くその通りだよ。秀吉さんの教育方針はいつも本当にご立派ですな。
ジョージもまだまだ半人前や。それを常に忘れんで勉強に励むんやで。
よしなさいよあなた。ジョージはいっつも一生懸命頑張ってるわよ。ねえ。
本当に立派ね。うちのジェシカにも爪の赤を分けてもらいたいわ。
Look at this. The family can act somewhat normal.
チェまだテストの結果を根に持ってるのかよ。受験勉強は私なりにやってるって。こんな席でまで言うことはねえだろうよ。うせえぜ。
Once people started praising George for his diligence, the conversation usually turned to Jessica, who hated studying. Jessica made an openly displeased face, as though she'd known this would happen. Yeah, talking about the responsible favorite of the family kids.
少しはおしとやかな言葉遣いも学ぶ必要があるんじゃないかね。後ろ宮家の家紋を背負う一人娘がそれではみっともないな。
あら、これはこれで魅力的よねえ。 時代は変わるのよ。
It's weird to think how little time we got with Kraus in retrospect in episode 1. Or, you know, all six of the members that died first. You know, before they had died, it felt like we got so much time with them. Like, we got a good amount of time with everyone, I mean, but then episode 1 went on for so long, you start to realize how early some of them were killed off.
男に食わしてもらうために定宿を装わなくてはならなかった時代はとっくに終わってるんだから。
そうそう、やっぱエヴァおばさんは分かってますね。
Someone's taking Jessica's side. She needs someone in her corner.
今日は頭痛が特にこたえます。
Still the headaches, yeah.
大丈夫ですか？夏日おばさん、顔色が優れないみたいです。
ありがとう。大丈夫です。でも本当に月日が経つのは早いものね。半ズボン姿で浜辺を駆け巡ってずぶ濡れになって帰ってきた日がついこの間のように思います。
それはジェシカちゃんも同じよね。今じゃお化粧の仕方にだってこだわるレディーなんだから。眉にこだわりがあるのね。今日のあなたとってもキュートよ。
ありがとうございます。誰も気づいてくれなかったんで自信なくしてたとこです。
A full smile rose to Jessica's face as the result of her own studies were finally appreciated. Eva smiled back in the same way. Then she turned that smile towards Natsuhi.
ダメよ、夏日姉さん。自分のこの小さな変化にも気づかなくちゃ。かわいそうなジェシカちゃん。一番最初にお母さんに気づいてもらいたかったでしょうに。ねえ。
Aunt Eva and Aunt Natsuhi's rivalry in episode 1 was one of the most entertaining parts, I feel like. They were butting heads so hard.
いいんですいいんです。あの人そういうの全然気づかない人なんで。
Yeah, we got some
Jessica.
other problems.
母親をあの人呼ばわりとは感心できんね。謝りなさい。
Sorry, I'll probably like say things out loud as we go on, like the obvious, only because it's been a year since I read chapter 1. So as things come up, you know, it's been a while since I've gone through it. So I'll say, oh right, you know, Jessica and Natsuhi have their issue, and probably just say things out loud to confirm it in my own head.
言葉遣いについては後でよく言って聞かせます。
お子様は邪魔だってんならそう言ってくれよ。私は席を外させてもらうぜ。ここは空気がよどんでるぜ。
ジェシカ。
Jessica was still at the age where tests and entrance exams are pretty nerve-wracking. Recently, she clashed often with her mother, who was enthusiastic about her education.
失礼いたします。
Shannon. Jessica, who was trying to leave the parlor in a bad mood, bumped into Shannon, who was pushing a serving cart filled with tea.
ああ、シャノン。私の分のお茶はいらないぜ。私は庭でもほっつき歩いてくる。
お嬢様？
シャノン、お茶が冷めます。配膳を急ぎなさい。
失礼しました。
Oh, right, yeah, Natsuhi was always kind of harsh with Shannon, that's right. Feeling like she needs to be the head of she was the head of, you know, the staff in the household. Shannon hadn't actually done anything wrong, but Natsuhi, who felt like something shameful to herself had been shown, lashed out at her emotionally. Right. I think she did that in episode 1 as well, sort of used Shannon as an output for for her anger an outlet. This was something that often happened in the Yoshirimiya family. But it seemed Shannon wasn't strong-willed enough to just accept it and move on. She shrank back and cowered while serving the tea. She had the unfortunate habit of making more mistakes when she cowered. Her pitiful appearance ruined the peaceful atmosphere that had existed a moment before. It wasn't really Shannon's fault, but she thought she might be the source and felt a pressure on her chest. Her shaking fingers made the utensils clang, and you couldn't have called it graceful, not even just to be polite. The more pitiful she appeared, the greater the silence grew. The more irritated Natsuhi looked, and the more Shannon cowered. A whole loop. Shannon's thin neck felt like it was being suffocated and choked by the reaper known as stress. At that time, George spoke brightly, blowing away the stiff atmosphere.
これはいい香りだね。何の紅茶かな？
これは。
言わないで。
Yeah, I said it. I noticed I said it when I went rewatched last episode, but I do wonder if this episode will be. Or sorry, when I rewatched the last video, I said I wonder if the episode 2 will be focused on George and Shannon. Since we started with that opening scene, maybe they'll get the spotlight or something.
当てるから。
I'm not sure maybe if they'll do that kind of thing where episodes have specific characters, in the spotlight.
これは特徴的な匂いだから多分わかるよ。アールグレイかな。
アールグレイ。
多分そうだと思います。
多分アールグレイで合ってるよ。台所に戻ったら紅茶の缶を見てごらん。
Is Natsuki gonna get mad at her for not knowing?
ほう、ジョージ君は紅茶に詳しいのかね？
I miss Krause's holes.
お世話になっている社長さんに紅茶の詳しい人がいまして、講釈を聞いているうちに少しだけわかるようになりました。
ああ、おこのぎ食品の社長さんかい。あの人、そういううんちくは得意やな。
紅茶の名前って産地を示すことが多いんでしょ？じゃあこれはアールグレイという土地で栽培されたのが由来なのかしらね。
昔イギリスにグレイ伯爵という人がいたそうで、その人にちなんでつけた名前だそうだよ。
Well, there you go. Not
ちなみに
something I knew.
この特徴的な匂いは茶葉のものではなくて、ベルガモットというみかんの親戚にあたる果物でつけたものなんだって。
Not a big tea fan in general.
そうなの。初めて知りました。そういう知識を持っていると紅茶もより美味しくいただけますね。
I've had tea, like hot tea, a lot, and I don't think I've ever actually had one that I could say I wanted to have again. Yeah, I get served it maybe a few times a year. There's never a time where I can say, it's something that I would go out and get myself if it wasn't just given to me.
酒もタバコも同じや。嗜好品はロマンをたしなむもんやで。こういううんちくが味わいを深めるんや。
薬の能書きと同じよね。夏日姉さんも愛用してる頭痛薬の説明書、今度はじっくり読んでから飲んでみなさいよ。
それはいい。今夜試してみなさい。
ええ、試してみます。
シャノンちゃん、そのポットを開けてごらん。茶葉の中にベルガモットを乾燥させたものが混じっているのを見つけられるはずだよ。
はい、入っています。 ます。オレンジの皮を乾燥させたようなものが混じっています。
うん。多分これがベルガモットだね。アールグレイの香りの主成分だよ。匂いは鮮烈だから味がきつそうな印象があるけど、素直で飲みやすい味なんだよ。ミルクティーにすると香りもまろやかになって素敵かもしれないね。みんなに注いでポットに余った分があったら、ぜひミルクティーにして飲んでみるといいよ。
はい。ありがとうございます。
George gave her a small wink. Shannon finally realized that George had kind-heartedly swept aside the tense atmosphere in the room, and he had done it for the sake of Shannon herself, a cowering servant. The Yoshinoya family did not pamper their servants. Any display of awkwardness would be harshly punished, so it was rare for them to be given a helping hand like this. Yeah, Shannon does not have the type of personality that melds well with that, because, man, a single mistake and she's done. Thanks to George's kindness, Shannon managed to regain control of herself and finished serving tea without further incident. As long as she stayed calm, she could carry out her work elegantly and flawlessly. By the time the black tea was laid out on the table and its elegant scent filled the room, the atmosphere had completely returned to its former peaceful mood, and everyone praised George's knowledge. Shannon wanted to thank him for saving her, but it didn't look like she would get the chance, so she decided to at least thank him inside her heart, praying to God that George would hear it as she pushed the serving cart away. Oh. Okay.
ジョージ兄さんは昔からそういう時には助け舟を出してくれるんだよ。話題をさらりと変えてくれるというかさ。
Shannon and Jessica were in the rose garden. Jessica still hadn't returned to the parlor after getting into a fight with her mother and was nonchalantly killing time here.
思い返せば、こういう助けられ方をしたのは今回が初めてじゃない気がします。
Yeah, I bet not. Whenever I made a careless mistake and George was around, I'm pretty sure he'd always naturally smooth things over and restore harmony. Okay, so we're back into Shannon's point of view. Maybe it wasn't something as direct as picking up a fork that had been dropped, but that was his way of caring. Even servants have their pride. They want to fix their own mistakes by themselves. And if a guest lends them a hand, they'll lose face.
そういう空気を読むのが得意なんだろうぜ。まあ、ジョージ兄さんの美学なんだろうよ。あの人、妙に気ざったらしいところあるからな。
そんなことありません。とっても素敵な方だと思います。
ひょっとしてシャノン、ジョージ兄さんに惚れた？
Well, about that. For once, Shannon had disagreed with Jessica in a slightly forceful tone, which immediately caught Jessica's attention.
いえ、そういうことはないかと。そういや、ジョージ兄さんってあまり浮いた話を聞いたことないし。
You don't think so, huh? Yeah, I guess I'm not sure where this lines up time-wise. If she doesn't feel that way yet, okay, I'll keep that in mind.
あれ？確か家庭的な子がタイプだとか前に聞いたかな。そりゃいいぜ、シャノンぴったりじゃん。
Is Shannon, family oriented?
私がですか？そんな、私にはそんな資格ありませんし。
Yeah, furniture.
資格はあるぜ。 何年も昔から顔を合わせてて半ば幼なじみ状態。互いに男女であることを意識しないナチュラルな関係ってのは一度意識し始めるとトントン拍子らしいぜ。
Jessica loved teen magazines with this kind of story, and she was always getting excited about that kind of thing with her friends. She was very quick to pick up on love stories like this. So this wasn't the first time Shannon had been exposed to this kind of story. But this certainly was the first time she'd started thinking of George as a member of the opposite sex. Okay, so this has to be before the date, I would assume. Yeah. Has to be before the date. So we started with the date, then we went backwards even more. She was furniture while George was an honored guest and a member of the Yoshimiya family. Until now, she'd assumed that even imagining any deeper relationship with him would be impermissible, so she hadn't thought of it. Since it was someone else's problem, Jessica poked fun at it, seeming to enjoy herself. It was all Shannon could do to hide her blushing cheeks. If George were to appear at a time like that, she'd have no chance of keeping her cool. They saw George come out from the entrance hall of the mansion. It looked like he'd seen them as well. He headed over, waving his hand. Shannon had to frantically try and regain her ordinary composure before George reached them.
おじいさまがやっと降りてきたよ。あとは大人たちの話になるからって追い出されてね。
Kinzo actually coming down out of his room to talk just sounds so unbelievable to me. I'll believe it when I see it.
じいさまの顔を拝むくらいなら疫病神にキスした方がマシだぜ。
そんな言い方は悪いよ。ただおじいさまは僕らのことを疫病神だと思っているかもしれないね。何しろ事業用にお金を借りたいという話でやってきたんだから。
That's right. This wasn't the customary annual October family conference. Eva's family had visited to apply for a business loan from the head family. Kinzo had vast resources, and he lent those out to his children. Of course, they didn't borrow money because they were living in poverty. How would they expand their businesses with the vast sums they wanted to borrow? How much interest would be attached, and how long would they have to repay it? This wasn't the sort of loan designed for the poor. It was a loan for those who were on the offensive. Kinzo strictly judged whether it would be worth lending out his fortune, and afterwards he strictly oversaw its use. Sorok and Jima would sometimes play host to this spectacle, where relatives visited and described their businesses to Kinzo. To the parents, these meetings burdened them with the strain of having to move a vast amount of money. But to Jessica, who lived on this isolated island called Rakanjima, it was a precious opportunity to meet up with her cousins. So being able to talk with the occasional guest, such as George like this, immediately cured the bad mood she'd gotten from that fight with her mother.
うちも全くケチくせえぜ。金なんて余ってるんだろうから気前よく貸してやりゃいいのによ。うちの親父もじいさまもどうせねちっこくもったいぶってんだろうぜ。
お金を貸すとき慎重になるのは当然のことだよ。もちろんうちの父さんも借り入れた分で事業を拡大し、しっかり返却できるプランを持って訪れてる。あとはプレゼンテーション次第ってところだろうね。本当は脇で見させてもらって勉強したいんだけど。
Yeah, they don't let them just sit in and be silent, huh?
母さんに追い出されちゃったんだよ。
Adults only.
ちょっと残念かな。
親方様はクラウス様やエヴァ様のことを今でも子供の頃と全く変わらないように叱られるようです。
You'd think Hideyoshi would want George to start learning.
そんな姿を息子のジョージ様にきっと見せたくないのでしょう。
Okay, well, you see that? As Shannon hung her head, she thought back on a scene familiar to those who worked in the mansion. Even Kraus, who acted haughtily towards his siblings, was still treated like a child by Kinzo. Shannon herself had often seen Kinzo slap Kraus and tell him to sit up straight. It was probably very embarrassing to be coerced like that at his age. I'm sure, yeah, jeez. Taking care to avoid being present at times like that was one of the important responsibilities held by the servants working here. And obviously it's clear to see where Rosa learned, hitting her kids from, or hitting Maria. She grew up with that kind of household, yeah. However, the fact that Shannon had ended up witnessing such a scene meant that she'd messed up at least once in the past.
そうだろうね。それを察して姿を消すのも子供の務めかな。それにしても今年もこの庭園の花は本当に素敵だね。
George stretched as he said that, and he smoothly changed the subject away from the one that was a little gloomy. This time, Shannon noticed it too. This person, George, could sensitively figure out the situation and always change the subject to something harmonious out of kindness. It was so smooth that Shannon hadn't noticed until today. Today, Shannon really had to admire the way George did that. Of the boys to Shannon's age, close to Shannon's age, that she'd known, nearly all had been classmates during her period of mandatory education. But they had all been young, and none had possessed the composure George had. Mere moments ago, he'd just been another guest. But right now, she couldn't help but think of him as something more. However, such thoughts were mere distractions from her work as a servant. Shannon tried to chase them away with a small shake of her head.
どうしたんだよ。
いえ、何でもありません。お茶のご用意をしましょうか。先ほどのアールグレイを改めてご用意します。
紅茶の名前覚えてくれたんだね。嬉しいよ。
さっきはお気遣いをありがとう
Getting
ご
your
ざいま
thanks
した。
that you couldn't do in front of everyone else. Shannon was finally able to put her gratitude into words. If you wrote it out, it wouldn't be very long, but Shannon had needed a little spark of courage to say it out loud. But George played dumb.
何のことだい？お礼を言われるような覚えはないけど。
He seemed to be playing the gentleman in his own way, letting her know he wasn't doing it out of a desire for gratitude. George's response seemed to be more or less exactly what Jessica had predicted. She couldn't help but burst out laughing.
なあ、こういうところ気ざったらしいだろ。
いえ、そんなことは。
Jessica poked fun at Shannon as the latter remained silent, red-faced. George didn't know the details, but he naturally joined in, laughing the same way. The three of them lazily walked around the garden, catching up on recent events. George, as the oldest cousin, talked about his life experiences. Jessica talked about recent life on Rakanjima. And Shannon talked about her recent work. They kept going on about these trivial things. Even when Shannon heard the others talk about deeply interesting things, she never felt any particular interest in the actual content of their stories. She was nothing more than a servant, and she had no intention of delving into her master's lives. She simply wanted them to enjoy their time speaking with her, and would only pretend to listen intently and nod at the right moments. Man. Can't even bring yourself to care about, like, your only mission is to make sure they are pleased with the conversation. It's rough. But for some reason, the things George talked about today seemed to catch her interest powerfully. Even things she'd normally ignore felt like they contained a trace of kindness behind the words. For some reason, she wanted to know more things about George, no matter how trivial. So, she stared fixedly at him. She thought that as far as looks went, this Ushirimiya George was probably about average and didn't stick out in any particular way. Well, that's not what I was expecting she'd say. But he was diligent, serious, and had a deep prudence which allowed him to understand people's hearts and show concern. But she'd never noticed these things before now. She may not have met him many times, but she'd known his face for many years. Even so, she hadn't noticed once until now. Shannon, embarrassed by her own obliviousness, blushed. George, perhaps thinking that Shannon would listen intently to his stories, kept talking happily and at length about things he'd done and seen. But Jessica didn't miss that slight change in Shannon. So she decided she'd change the conversation to the topic she was sure Shannon was most interested in.
そういやさ、ジョージ兄さん、いい加減に彼女とかはできたわけ？
なんだい、やぶから棒に。
Let's see Shannon's reaction when he says no. Normally, that reaction should have been answer enough. But for some reason, as she was now, Shannon wouldn't be able to understand it unless he said it clearly.
そのジョージ様はお優
Is
しい
she,
で
is
す
she gonna press him for him to state it clearly?
さぞやその表になるだろうと。
いや、その。
よせ
Getting a
よ
little
シャノ
nervous.
ン。そういう追い詰め方はかえって意地悪だぜ。
私は別に意地悪のつもりは。
嬉しい勘違いをありがとう。残念だけど、特定の一人の女性とはまだご縁がないよ。見ての通り、容姿も並以下だからね。
Oh, as you can see.
女の子を楽しくさせてあげられるような気の利いた話術もないし。
そんなことないと思います。それに男性の魅力は容姿では測れないところで決まるんじゃないかと思います。だからそのジョージ様はとても魅力的な男性じゃないかと思います。
Shannon was being uncharacteristically verbose. She hardly ever spoke at such length. George seemed fairly pleased to hear someone applaud his charm like this, but he was just a little surprised at this sudden high praise. Jessica, now sure her guess was spot on, appeared to barely be holding back laughter. Yeah, Shannon's not doing a good job of hiding it right now.
ありがとう、シャノンちゃん。僕に魅力を感じてくれるような寛大な女性に早く巡り会いたいね。
Uh-huh.
きっと巡り会えると思います。
Yeah, where could one be?
ジョージ様の本当の魅力に気づいている女性は
Yeah, at least
きっと
one.
いえ、大勢いらっしゃると思い
You're
ますよ。
gonna correct you. She probably wanted to say that there was at least one girl very close to him. Shannon avoided saying that much, drawing a final line as a servant.
そうかな。さすがに照れるね。
He had probably never been praised this highly by a girl before. Heavily. George's face turned just as bright red as Shannon's. As she watched the two of them, Jessica giggled sadistically.
ジョージ兄さんもやがては素敵なパートナーと出会うだろうけどさ、今のままじゃきっと上手にパートナーをエスコートできないと思うぜ。勤勉でいらっしゃるようだけど、そっちのお勉強はからっきしみたいだしよ。
Be able to properly escort. Abandon your study.
悪かったね。その勉強はこれから少しずつしていくよ。
相手もいないのにどうやって？
Okay, stop saying that.
恋愛映画でも見る？
Fucking.
それとも秀吉おじさんに習う？
まるで鬼の首でも取ったみたいだな。こういう話では男は女の子にかなわないね。
Normally when George and Jessica got together, their parents would say George is diligent and admirable, and Jessica is lazy and rude. So it was probably unbearable fun for Jessica to have their roles finally reversed. George realized this as well, so he resigned himself to being the one getting teased for once.
ジョージ兄さんさえいいならさ、シャノンでちょっと練習してみたら？シャノンを一日退屈させずにデートに連れてくんだよ。どうよ？
デート。
そんなお嬢様。
When she heard Jessica's audacious plan, Shannon's face turned bright red with a poof, and a donut of smoke started to rise from her head. Classic.
それはとても魅力的な提案だけど、シャノンちゃんに悪いよ。
Oh no, it's okay.
彼女の貴重な休日を奪うだけじゃない。彼女が本当に思いを寄せる人と二人きりで過ごす聖域に僕が割り込んでしまうことになる。そんな無粋なことはできないね。
私もその思い人とかそういう人はいませんので、そういうお気遣いは無用なのです。
Shannon's blood had all rushed to her head, and it looked like even she didn't know what she was babbling about. Jessica, who knew how Shannon normally was, seemed to be finding this hilarious. She couldn't hide her cackling laughter anymore.
そうなのかい？シャノンちゃんみたいな可愛い子が独り身なんて信じられないね。
These dorks, oh my god.
私使用人ですから、男の方との縁なんてありませんし、
ってことは、シャノンも将来素敵な男性を射止めるために交際の練習が必要だってことじゃないのかよ。つまり二人とも互いの思惑は一致するわけだ。なるほど、こりゃいいぜ。
Jessica irresponsibly cheered the two of them on. By now, even George was hanging his head and turning red.
ジョージ、さっきから呼んでるわよ。
Look at Jessica playing matchmaker.
聞こえないの？
Time to go? When Eva appeared in what was already an embarrassing situation, both of them got even more flustered. Jessica watched and laughed loudly.
母さん、ごめんよ、話が込み入っちゃっててね。気づかなかった。
これはエヴァ様、大変失礼しました。
若い子たち同士で大層盛り上がってたみたいね。あなたたちもみんなお年頃だもの。
Something like that.
そういう話題が尽きないのもよくわかるわ。
嫌ですね。エヴァおばさんだってまだまだお若いじゃないですか。秀吉おじさんとの馴れ初めを聞かせてくださいよ。
そんなの言えるわけないわよ。
They met.
本当にみんな若いんだから。
それで何母さん、用があって声をかけたんじゃないの？
お父さんたちの話が終わったわ。おじいさまにあなたの話をするからいらっしゃい。
僕の話？
So,
何の話かな？
今みんなでしてたのと同じ話よ。ほら、例の話。
what they were just talking about Shannon?
別におじいさまに話すようなことじゃないんじゃないかな。
Oh. Wait, why would
何の
Kinzo
話
want
だ
to
よ
talk?
まさかジョージ兄さん誰かと結婚するの？
それはおめでとうございます。
Shannon.
違うよ違うよ、特定の女性はいないってさっき言ったじゃないか。
威張ることじゃないでしょ。まったく。
Depends on who you're saying it to. Ava smiled bitterly, looking a little exasperated.
わかった。ジョージ兄さんあれでしょ、お見合いだ。
Omiai.
お見合いですか？
まあね。
An omiai, a marriage meeting. Is that maybe talking about potential suitors, possibly? Surely, as a man, George wanted to find a partner by himself and bring her home with him. So it seemed he thought it would a bit pathetic to meet his partner for the first time in a marriage meeting arranged by his parents.
お見合いというのはもっと年齢が成熟してからするものじゃないのかな。僕はまだ一人前になったって自覚すらないというのに。
He's gonna go inside and meet a potential spouse?
もちろん、即結納即結婚なんて焦る気は全然ないのよ。
I'm sure she would have been chosen by Kinzo or the
親
parents.
睦を深めて、年齢的にもう少し落ち着いてから籍を入れる形でも問題ないの。
Judging by Ava's forceful attitude and George's non-committal one, the others could catch a glimpse of the story behind this marriage meeting. They didn't know who George was supposed to be meeting, but it was surely someone who would profit Ava's family, business, or in a business sense. The very fact that they'd been satisfied with a mere engagement to deepen the relationship between the two families rather than an immediate marriage made it feel almost like a political maneuver.
結婚はね、好きになってからするものじゃないの。
No?
してからなれることよ。
Oh, of course, right.
感情だけで結婚すると必ず後悔する。
You'll always end up regretting it.
身元のしっかりした人を生涯の伴侶に選んで、それから愛情を築いていくのも決して間違ったことではないの。
I see.
エヴァおばさん、それじゃ秀吉おじさんに悪いですよ。
That's one way to do it, I guess.
私はあの人のこと大好きよ。いつまでも一緒にいて人生を共にしていきたい。
エヴァ様、素晴らしいです。
They did have that their last scene before they were murdered in episode 1 when they were talking in their room together. I do remember that was very
本
sweet.
当にご立派です。
ありがとう。
I mean Eva and Hideyoshi, their last scene.
でもその気持ちは二人で夫婦をしていくうちに育んだものよ。そして今の私たちより未来の私たちの方がもっともっと仲良しだと信じてる。私は夫婦はそういうものがいいと思ってるの。
I guess if it works out that way, that's great. But what if What if after marriage you realize that you're not compatible in that way? Well, then you're shit out of luck because you're already married.
だからって好きでもない相手と結婚してもいいって論法にはならないと思うけどな。
だからって好きな相手なら誰と結婚してもいいという論法にはならないわ。結婚は一瞬。でもその後の夫婦生活はずっとずっと長いの。だから一時の感情に任せず慎重に相手を探すべきなの。
I mean, sure. Not making a split decision is good. It should be something that should be
そ
thought
して
about.
それは人生経験の未熟なあなたよりお母さんたちの方がうまくやれるとは思わない？
Well,
それはそうかもしれないけど。
I mean,
あなたは私の自慢の一人息子よ。
no one has experience getting married until they get married.
どこへ出しても恥ず
Everyone
か
has
し
to
く
do
ない
it.
くらい
Well,
立
not
派に
everyone
成長してくれたわ。
like these people, but I mean, I don't know. This is something else. I know. I mean, this is how it's done for a lot of people in the world, but it is strange to me, at least.
バトラ君は席を抜け、あなたが今やお父様の血を引く唯一の男孫。
Okay, Battler.
あな
Yeah.
たにふさわしい相手は慎重に選ばなくてはならない。
Oh no. Now I know Battler left because he was really angry at Rudolph for something that Rudolph had done regarding Battler's mother, I believe. Let me see if it's in my notes here. Yeah, he said he'd never forgive his father. He'd never forgive his father for what he did to Mom. And I don't remember if it was mentioned in episode 1. What? I don't think it was mentioned what Rudolph did that Battler was angry about. Unless I'm forgetting. As everyone related to the Yoshida family knew, Eva adored George immensely. But that didn't mean she had pampered him. She had been strict with him and raised him into a wonderful boy who wouldn't betray her expectations. That was why she treasured him so.
あなたの相手は決して母さんたちの損得で決めてなんかいないわ。
Okay, that's a step in the right
あな
direction.
たにふさわしい本当に素晴らしい女性に母さん、今はあなたの中にある青臭い若さがそれを疎むかもしれない。でもこれだけは母さんの言うことを聞きなさい。私があなたのためを思わなかったことが一度でもある？
それはないけど。
And we know in the future that George is secretly proposing to Shannon. So, I do wonder, like, how much of a say he has in the whole situation and what the reactions of, Eva and Hideyoshi would be if they knew what he did.
今はそれで結構よ。さあ行きましょう。お父様を待たせてるわよ。急いで屋敷に行きなさい。
They didn't. Oh man. It's been so long now I'm second guessing whether certain things happened. Like now I'm trying to think, when Shannon died as part of the original 6, did George tell his parents how he felt about her, or that he... Because I think... Didn't he take the ring he gave Shannon off of her body? See, it's the small details like that I'm a little fuzzy on, that's it. You know, I did spend a lot of hours going back through all the old content, but obviously I couldn't read every line all over again.
じゃあごめんね二人ともまた後で
George bowed to the two of them, and after bowing once more to Shannon, he dashed off to the mansion.
じゃあおばさんも行くわね。楽しい話を打ち切っちゃってごめんねジェシカちゃん、シャノンちゃん。
いえ気にしないでください。
If you know exactly what they were talking
じゃ
about,
あシャノ
then
ン、私たちは行こうぜ。
do you know about Shannon?
はい。
大丈夫よ。ジェシカちゃんだってきっとそのうち素敵な出会いがあるわよ。ジェシカちゃんにふさわしい素敵な方がね。
Directing this just towards Jessica.
私と同程度ってことは成績の悪い男かな。なんだかうぜえぜ。
もちろんシャノンちゃんにもね。あなたにふさわしい素敵な男性がきっと現れるわよ。
Okay.
はい。ありがとうございます。
As Eva giggled and smiled, she approached Shannon's ear with a hand over her mouth as though she was trying to tell her a secret.
使用人風情のあなたにぴったりの相手が
Oh, Eva. Oh, Eva. Eva.
義務教育に行かせてもらった恩も忘れて。
Yeah. I kind of saw all that coming. I thought she would say something, not secretly, I thought maybe she'd say something vague out loud, but, God damn. God damn.
そんなつもりは、私。
Oh.
ジョージはお父様の血を引く孫
Stay
の
away
中で
from
は
my
嫡男に当たるのよ。ひょっとしたら未来の後宮家を背負うことになるかもしれない人。その期待に応えるためにたくさんの勉強を重ねて素晴らしい大学に入り、素晴らしい成績を残しているわ。
And so a lot of what Eva was saying during this conversation to George makes sense. It's all just reinforcing to Shannon as well. Shannon and George, that they can't, they can't do that. They can't be together. Snatch George away. You uneducated, incompetent, unqualified, uncultured servant. Those malicious words all poured into Shannon's ear without spilling a drop. To Shannon, it was like cold water was being poured in there. Oh boy. This was all whispered to Shannon in secret. And with the same smile as before, Jessica, who could only see Eva's expression, didn't think it was anything other than Eva telling Shannon some embarrassing story about love. When their secret conversation ended, Eva patted Shannon's shoulders as though she was urging her on.
大丈夫よ。あなたにぴったりのお相手が
Perfect
見
match.
つかるから。
Yep.
ね。じゃあね、ジェシカちゃん。また後でね。
はい、また後で。秀吉おじさんとの話、その時聞かせてくださいね。
Oh, man.
いやよ。
Eva laughed loudly and headed back to the entrance hall. Behind Jessica, who was cheerfully waving her hand, Shannon reflected very, very deeply on those words of Eva's about knowing her place. Okay. All right. There's my first recording back in almost a year, with hopefully many more to come. It's good to be back. We're starting off nice and chill with, episode 2, as expected. Man, how many episodes of how many parts of episode 1 did we record before, shit really went down? Man. Yeah, we'll see what happens before shit hits the fan this time around. And it's interesting, all that happened within a couple days, but now we're time hopping. All of episode 1 happened within 2 or 3 days. But now we're getting, backstory kind of stuff where we're seeing things from before that weekend or that set of days. So we can, see a bit deeper into the characters and where they're coming from, I guess. All right. Good stuff. Glad to be back. Hyped to play more. And I will catch you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.